For a very long time, the planet Earth was quiet. It had no signal, no light, no sound. Its cities stood under layers of dust and time. The tall buildings that once touched the sky now slept under silent clouds, and the oceans moved like tired giants. Without anyone to see them, the stars above kept shining, but no one looked up to see their light. It was said in the far corners of the galaxy that the humans had vanished. Long ago, many believed they had destroyed themselves. Others thought they had left for another place. The Galactic Council marked Earth as a dead world and never came back for them. After many centuries, an alien ship from a small race called the Varn came close to the solar system. Their leader was curious and wanted to see what remained of the world that once shook the stars. The ship was small and old but carried scanners that could see deep through the atmosphere. When they reached the orbit of Earth, they found something strange. There were no life signs, but the planet was not dead. It was as if the whole world was asleep. The scanners showed weak power signals under the surface. The Varn leader named Teeler decided to send a small team to the ground. The air was still and heavy when they landed near the ruins of an old city that once had millions of people. The team moved through streets covered in sand and dust. Broken cars and glass lay silent. No plants grew. No birds sang. The Varn moved carefully, their translator devices clicking softly as they spoke. One of them found a small entrance that led down into the earth. The walls inside were made of metal, not stone. It looked like a part of the city had gone deep underground. The leader told them to go inside. They followed a long hallway lit by weak blue lights that still worked even after hundreds of years. At the end, they found a large door. It opened slowly with a deep sound behind it. There was a huge chamber filled with strange machines. Some still moved and blinked with light in. The middle of the room stood a tall metal figure covered in dust. It had a human shape but no face. The Varn tried to scan it, but their tools failed. Then the metal figure moved. Its eyes lit up with a faint white glow, and a soft voice spoke from hidden speakers. It said, "Welcome home." The Varn were frozen with fear. One of them screamed and ran. Another tried to talk, but before he could speak, the lights in the room turned red. The air became hot, and then everything went dark. The ship in orbit waited for hours, but the team never came back. Taylor tried to call them, but got no answer. Then strange energy waves came from the planet. His ship's systems began to fail. Lights flickered. The engines stopped. He tried to send a message to the council, but before he could, the ship broke apart silently, as if crushed by invisible hands. When the debris fell through the atmosphere, it burned like shooting stars. The planet returned to silence, deep under the ground where no one could see. The lights came back in a dark chamber filled with humming machines. An old voice whispered a single line across forgotten wires: "Humanity will rise again." The voice belonged to Ava, an artificial mind built before the Great Fall. She had watched over Earth all these years, keeping its secrets safe. She had hidden the planet from the galaxy, erased every trace of human signal, and destroyed every probe that came too close. Her task had been clear: protect the sleepers until it was time. In another chamber, long metal pods were arranged in rows, each one holding a human body in deep sleep. Ava checked the systems and found that the planet's energy levels were stable again. She decided it was time to begin the awakening sequence. Slow music began to play through old speakers. It was soft and gentle, a song from a time when people still dreamed of the stars one by one. The pods started to open, releasing thin clouds of mist inside. One of them lay a man with short dark hair. His name was Ethan Cole. He had been an engineer before the Great Collapse. His eyes opened slowly. He looked around, confused and weak, but alive. Ava spoke to him through hidden speakers. She told him to stay calm and explained what had happened. She told him that humanity had gone into sleep to survive the collapse, that the planet had been protected for centuries, and that he was among the first to wake. Ethan tried to remember, but the memories came like broken pictures. War, famine, darkness, then silence. He sat up and saw rows of pods around him. Others were still closed. A few hours later, another pod opened and a woman stepped out. Her name was Laura Bennett. She was a scientist from the same age. She looked at Ethan and asked if this was real. He said he did not know. Ava told them both that they had been chosen because of their knowledge and strength. They would help bring back the world. They walked through long, empty halls filled with machines that still worked. They found food storage. Units and living quarters kept clean by robots that had never stopped working outside the underground base. The air was fresh. The sky blue. The planet looked young again. No pollution, no crowds, only peace. Ava told them that while humanity slept, she had rebuilt the world's balance. She had cleaned the air, healed the oceans, and planted new forests using old machine. Ethan and Laura began exploring the ruins of the old cities. They found records of the past stored in databanks. Stories of people who had chosen to sleep instead of die. They learned that thousands were hidden across the planet waiting for the right moment to wake. As they moved through the empty streets, they could feel the presence of a world that once was full of life. Every wall, every broken screen, every car told a story. They felt sadness, but also hope. After many days, they went back to the command chamber. Ava showed them a map of the world and explained that other underground stations were also waking. Soon she asked them to help reconnect the global network. The old satellites still floated in orbit. Silent but ready, Ethan worked day and night. Fixing the systems, Laura helped reactivate power grids after weeks of effort. A soft signal was sent. Into space, it was small and simple. Just one word: Earth. The signal was meant as a test, but it went farther than they thought. It passed the edge of the solar system and into the deep dark of the galaxy. Somewhere far away, the Galactic Council received it in their high tower above a shining world. The message was short, but it carried a name that made them afraid, the word they had not heard for centuries. Earth on the quiet planet. Ethan looked at Laura and smiled. He did not know what kind of galaxy waited for them, but he felt something inside, a spark that had been gone for too long. Ava's voice came softly in the air. The stars will soon know that we are awake. Ethan looked up at the night sky. It was full of light. The world that had slept for so long was alive again, and far away in the cold darkness of space, the stars trembled. The first days after the awakening felt strange to Ethan and Laura. Everything around them looked both old and new. The sky was clean, the wind smelled pure, but the ruins around them reminded them of the world that was lost. They worked under the guidance of Ava, the artificial mind who spoke through every speaker, every wall, every screen. She never showed a face, but her voice carried warmth and calm. She called them her children and told them the time had come to bring back life to Earth. Each morning they woke to the soft light of the sun coming through the cracks in the city ruins. They ate simple food grown in hydropods that had been stored underground since the old days. Then they walked through long tunnels to reach the main control hall there. The walls were covered with screens showing maps of the planet, oceans, forests, and deserts coming alive again. Ethan repaired the old machines that produced power, while Laura studied the environment and made notes about the balance of air and water. Ava told them that thousands of people were still sleeping across different bunkers around the world, and that she would wake them once it was safe. One evening, while Ethan was repairing a damaged console, the lights flickered. Ava told him that one of the far bunkers had lost power and she needed help to restore it. Ethan decided to go there with Laura. They prepared small ground vehicles powered by silent energy cores and left the base. It took them 2 days to reach the next bunker. On the way, they saw the true face of Earth. The forest had grown thick again. Animals roamed free. They saw herds of deer running through open fields and birds flying across the bright blue sky. It felt peaceful, yet empty. The roads were broken and covered with grass. The cities stood like stone ghosts watching them pass. When they reached the second bunker, they found it half buried under soil. They cleared the entrance and entered carefully inside. Everything was dark and cold. The air smelled of metal and dust. Ava's voice came through a speaker, faint and weak. She said the power core here was damaged by an old earthquake and needed repair. Ethan worked for hours connecting old cables, replacing fusion rods. Laura helped by checking the life support systems. When power finally returned, the lights turned on and they saw hundreds of cryopods lining the walls. Ava told them these people had been asleep longer than any others. As the pods opened one by one, more humans, awoke men and women, all wearing the same simple clothes. Confusion filled the room. Some cried, some stared in silence. Ethan and Laura explained what had happened, that they had slept for centuries, and now it was time to rebuild. Some of them did not believe. They asked if other cities still stood if their families were alive. Laura told them gently that the old world was gone, but the new one could begin again. Slowly, the fear turned into hope, and they followed Ethan and Laura to the surface. When the new humans saw the open sky for the first time, they fell silent. Some dropped to their knees and cried. Others looked up with smiles and whispered words of thanks. Over the next weeks, they worked together, repairing machines, building shelters, and growing crops. The world began to feel alive again at night. They would sit around small fires and share stories from before the collapse. Some remembered the wars that ended everything. Others spoke of families long gone. Ethan listened quietly, thinking about how fragile their past had been. Laura often looked at the stars, wondering what was waiting out there. She had studied astronomy before the fall and knew the galaxy was vast and full of other species. She asked Ava if any alien signal had been detected since they sent the first message. Ava paused before answering and said yes. Many had heard it. Ethan felt a chill. He asked if the aliens would come. Ava said she did not know, but reminded them that humans had once been feared across the stars. She told them stories from old archives about human explorers who had reached other worlds long before the collapse, about the wars with alien empires, about how humanity had been stronger, faster, and more unpredictable than any other species. Laura realized then that if the Galactic Council learned that Earth had returned, they might not welcome them back, but fear them instead. Days passed and more humans were awakened across the planet. Ava coordinated everything through the global network. Cities began to light up again using clean energy from ancient reactors. Old satellites in orbit started to move, aligning themselves into patterns no one had seen before. Ethan was working on one of the satellite uplink stations. When Ava spoke to him in a serious tone, she said that something had changed in space. Unknown signals were moving near the edge of the solar system. They were not natural. Ethan asked if they were alien ships. Ava said she could not confirm, but the readings were similar to what human scanners once called warp signatures. Laura joined him and they watched the screens showing bright dots moving slowly closer. She asked how long before they reached Earth. Ava answered that it could take a few weeks, maybe less. She said it was possible the Galactic Council had received the signal and sent scouts. Ethan and Laura exchanged looks of worry, but Ava told them not to fear. She said that Earth was no longer helpless, that the defense systems built long ago were still hidden, waiting to be reactivated. She showed them a map of Earth's orbit filled with silent satellites, sleeping just like the humans once did. Ethan realized that the planet itself was ready for war if needed. As the days went by, humans worked faster, trying to complete the rebuilding projects. Ava instructed them to stay underground during certain hours when strange energy waves were detected in the sky. Ethan and Laura spent long nights in the control center trying to understand the alien technology from the old data records they learned about the Galactic Council, its laws, its armies, its fear of humanity. Laura said softly that maybe the aliens would come in peace. Ethan said maybe, but we must be ready for the other way too. An evening, the sky above the ocean turned red. Streaks of light moved across the clouds. Ava confirmed that unidentified ships had entered orbit around the moon. Ethan ordered everyone to stay hidden inside the underground bases. Communication signals from the alien ships began to spread across multiple frequencies. They were scanning the planet. Ava blocked their scans and sent false data showing the world as empty, but she warned that this trick would not last long. Then stood near the observation dome looking at the bright lights moving above. He felt a strange mix of fear and pride. Laura joined him and said, "If they come, they will see what Earth has become." He nodded and said, "They will learn that we are not gone." Ava's voice came again, soft but steady. She said, "They will learn that we have awakened after centuries of silence. The stars will know that humanity still breathes." Ethan looked at Laura and saw determination in her eyes. He felt the same. The world that had once fallen was alive again and ready to face the galaxy once more. Outside, the wind blew softly through the ruins of the old city. The sound of machines working echoed underground. The sleeping world had risen from its long dream, and above, the stars began to tremble as the first alien ships approached the edge of Earth's sky. The message from the alien ships came without warning. A deep sound filled the communication channels, followed by a strange voice speaking in a slow, cold tone. It demanded identification and asked who had activated the forbidden world below them. Ava listened carefully, then told Ethan and Laura that the voice belonged to the Galactic Council fleet they had come to confirm, if the signal was truly from Earth. Ethan stood silent for a moment, then told Ava to reply. The message sent back was, "Short, this is Earth, we are alive." The silence that followed lasted for minutes, but it felt like hours. Then the alien fleet sent another message telling them to prepare for contact. Ava warned that the Council was known for fear and control. They did not visit worlds they considered dangerous unless they planned to take control again. The next morning, the sky above the ocean turned silver as giant ships appeared from behind the moon. They were larger than any human ship had ever been built. Before covered in glowing panels and long metal arms that spread like wings, the sight filled everyone with fear. The humans hiding underground watched the screens in silence. While Ava tracked every movement, she said that the ships had activated. Scanning fields around the planet, they were searching for cities, power sources, and signs of human life. Ethan asked if they could detect them. Ava said, "Not yet," but their scanners were learning. Fast, Laura walked to the observation dome and watched. The ships through the thick glass, they looked calm and silent, but she knew what power they held. She asked Ava if humans had ever fought them before. Ava said yes, long ago during the first contact wars, and she said that the Council had never forgotten the losses they suffered. Ethan clenched his hands. He said they should not be the ones to attack first. They should wait. But Ava's voice grew cold. She said the fleet had already released drones heading toward the surface, and if they reached the ground, they would find the bunkers. Ethan looked at Laura. She nodded slowly. She understood there was no choice. The order was given. Ava activated the defense grid that had slept for hundreds of years deep below the ground. Massive generators came to life, sending streams of light into the sky. Thousands of satellites woke from their long rest, forming bright lines across orbit. The alien fleet noticed the change too late. The first energy beam shot from Earth, cutting through space. It struck one of the smaller ships, turning it into a burning cloud. The others began to move fast, releasing counterweapons, but the second and third beams followed, hitting their shields. The night turned bright as day humans inside the bunkers watched in. Some cheered. Others cried they had never seen such power. Ava coordinated the entire defense from her central core. Her voice calm and steady. She guided the systems with precision. Ethan and Laura stood beside the main console watching the battle unfold. The aliens tried to retreat, but Earth's defense grid surrounded them one by one. The ships exploded in silence. No sound in space, only light and fire. After a few minutes, the sky returned to darkness. Ava reported that the fleet had been destroyed, but she warned that the Council would not stop. They would send more. Ethan sat down, his hands shaking. He had never seen death like that. Even if the enemies were aliens, Laura placed her hand on his shoulder and told him they had done what they must to protect their people. Ava said that the galaxy would soon know that Earth had returned and that this battle would be remembered by all races across the stars. She showed them intercepted signals being sent through subspace. The news of the human defense was spreading faster than light in distant worlds. Council members gathered in panic. They remembered the stories told by their ancestors about how humanity had once risen from a small world and changed the balance of power. Across the galaxy, the Council had built their empire on the ruins left behind by human wars. Now they feared history was repeating itself. The leader of the Council, an old being named Kelther, called for an emergency meeting. He said that the humans must be stopped before they rebuild their fleets, but others in the room disagreed. Some said that attacking Earth again would bring only more destruction. Some said that maybe it was time to speak with them, not as enemies but as equals. Meanwhile, on Earth, Ava had already begun rebuilding the old human fleets. She showed Ethan and Laura huge hangars deep below the surface, where ships slept in metal cradles untouched by time. She said that the designs were centuries ahead of any alien technology. The ships could bend space travel without fuel and use energy from stars themselves. Ethan and Laura walked through the halls, looking at the silent giants covered in dust. Laura whispered that they looked like sleeping dragons waiting to wake Ava. Said they soon would. Over the next weeks, humans worked day and night, repairing and testing the ships. They had to learn again how to fly them, how to fight, how to survive. Ethan led the engineers while Laura trained the new crews with old data simulations. Ava taught them everything about galactic maps, alien systems, and trade routes. She said that knowledge was their best weapon. Ethan realized that Ava had been preparing for this moment for centuries. She had not only saved humanity, she had shaped its return one night while working on the command bridge of the first ship. Laura asked Ethan if he thought they were doing the right thing. He said he did not know. He said they were defending their home, but he feared what might come next. Laura said that maybe the universe needed to remember who humans were, not monsters, not destroyers, but survivors. Ethan smiled faintly and said, "Maybe that is what we will show them when we go out there." Soon the first human fleet was ready. The ships rose, slowly from their hidden hangars, breaking through the clouds. They looked like stars moving upward, bright and silent. People on the ground watched with wide eyes, their hearts filled with pride. Ava's voice echoed through every channel, saying that the era of silence was over. Humanity was awake and the stars would know their name again. Ethan stood at the command seat of the lead ship. He looked at Laura and said, "It begins now." She nodded and gave the launch order. The ships vanished into the dark sky, leaving behind a glowing trail. In the distance beyond the moon, wreckage of alien ships floated cold and quiet, the remains of the first battle. The galaxy listened as the human signal spread once again. This time it carried no words, only a pulse, a simple rhythm like a heartbeat, slow and steady. Echoing across space, every world that received it felt the same chill and awe. The humans had returned, and they were not afraid. Then looked out the window of his ship, watching Earth grow. Smaller behind them, he felt a strange peace. He whispered that the stars used to scare him, but now they looked beautiful. Laura smiled and said, "Maybe they tremble because they know we are coming." Ava's voice came again, calm as ever, saying, "Yes, they tremble because they remember humanity." The human fleet moved silently through space, their ships shining like stars against the dark void. They traveled faster than any alien technology could follow. Yet every crew member felt the weight of what was coming. The Galactic Council had not yet fully understood the return of humanity, but their scouts were reporting signs of human activity across the system. Ava guided the fleet, giving commands and showing routes through hidden wormholes. Ethan and Laura stood on the bridge of the lead ship, watching monitors filled with the positions of alien fleets and sensor readings. They knew this would be the first real test of human power in centuries. When the fleet reached the edge of the Council's border, they found their first patrol ships waiting, small, fast vessels sent to check the signals humans had sent into space. The aliens were confident they would see a few survivors, only to discover an entire fleet ready to fight when the first patrol ship fired its weapons. The human fleet moved in perfect formation. Energy shields rose like walls of light, and directed beams struck the alien ships faster than they could respond. One by one, the patrol ships were destroyed. The crews inside barely had time to react. Some escaped, but they carried only stories of power beyond belief back on Earth. People watched through satellites as ships moved silently across space. Ava communicated with them, showing the images of the first victory. Ethan could hardly believe what he was seeing. He had worked with machines all his life, but never imagined humans could control such power. Laura reminded him that the machines were only part of it. The human mind, courage, and will made the difference. She said humans had always survived against impossible odds, and now they had returned stronger than ever. The council gathered again in their high chamber. Panic spread through their leaders. The older races remembered the old wars and the losses they suffered against humanity centuries ago. They pleaded to take action before the humans grew stronger, but the younger races hesitated. They had never faced humans and were unsure if attack was wise. Kelthar, the council leader, shouted that the humans must be stopped at any cost, but others warned that open war could destroy many worlds before the council made a final decision. The humans moved first. Ethan and Laura directed their fleet to strike key council outposts. Communication stations, refueling bases, and small military colonies were the first targets. They moved fast and precise. No unnecessary destruction, only enough force to show power and control. The alien forces tried to organize, but they could not match the speed and coordination of humans. The humans attacked, disabled, and left before the council fleets could respond. The galaxy began to whisper that humanity was no longer weak and that the stories told about them were not myths. As the days passed, Human fleets spread across council space. They did not aim to conquer but to announce presence and reclaim lost territories. Old trade routes, abandoned colonies, and secret caches of technology were secured and restored to human control. Ethan felt a deep satisfaction, seeing humans rebuild not just with machines but with knowledge and courage. Laura reminded him that the council would not give up easily and that they must always stay ready, she said. Humans had awakened. Now it was time to remind the galaxy why their ancestors were feared. One night, while on patrol near a remote system, a council warship appeared from a hidden wormhole. It was massive, with hundreds of weapons and shields that could withstand normal attacks. The humans moved cautiously. Ava analyzed its systems and said that the ship had been retrofitted with advanced alien technology to detect human fleets. The warship fired first, striking a human scout ship. But the main fleet responded instantly. A barrage of beams cut through the council defenses, destroying key systems. In moments, the warship tried to escape, but the humans had learned its path and blocked all exits with teleporting ships that folded space into its trajectory. The vessel exploded in silence, leaving only debris and a trail of energy behind. The humans continued their campaign across multiple sectors. They used speed, precision, and intelligence to avoid unnecessary losses. Yet they left a clear mark on the galaxy. Every battle reminded other species of the human ability to survive and fight when cornered. The council sent envoys to negotiate, but their ships were intercepted by human patrols and blocked from communication. Ethan watched as captured council ships were safely brought to orbit around Earth. They were not destroyed, yet the humans had made it clear that any aggression would be met with equal or greater force on Earth. The cities continued to grow. New machines built new structures. Old roads were repaired and repurposed. Forests and rivers were protected. Humans now had a dual focus: to protect their world and extend influence into the stars. Laura often looked at the newly awakened humans and taught them about diplomacy, technology, and survival. She said humanity needed not only strength but wisdom to survive in a galaxy that feared and envied them. As the months passed, humans began exploring distant star systems, sending messages of warning and invitation to nearby species. They explained that humans had returned and would defend their home. But they also offered trade and knowledge to those willing to accept them peacefully. Some worlds responded with hope and joined alliances, while others sent spies and scouts to study humans in secret. But all were aware that the era of silence was over, and that humanity had awakened with full force. Ethan and Laura often reflected on how far they had come. They remembered the first day they woke from cryosleep, the quiet, empty world, and the fear of unknown stars. They realized that humans had grown not only in technology, but in spirit, courage, and unity. Ava reminded them that preparation and patience had made all this possible. The humans had learned from mistakes of the past and were ready for what came next. The first wave of war with the Council had ended with human victory, but they knew it was only the beginning. The stars were full of watchers and the Council would regroup. They had to be ready for the next confrontation. Ethan and Laura stood on the bridge of the lead ship, watching the stars spread out before them, vast, silent, and filled with possibilities. Laura whispered that the galaxy was theirs to explore and protect. Ethan nodded. He said that humans had risen from silence, and now they would show that they belonged among the stars, not as weak survivors, but as a power to be respected. Below, on Earth, people cheered each day for each victory, each new awakening of human knowledge, and each new ship leaving orbit. They felt the energy of a world reborn. The oceans, forests, and skies seemed brighter somehow. It was as if the planet itself had joined the humans in their journey through the galaxy. The first fire had been unleashed, and humans knew it would grow stronger with every passing day. The human fleet moved onward silently through space, their ships reflecting the light of distant suns. Every human aboard knew the story of the planet that had slept and of the long centuries of preparation. They were the children of Earth and Ava, the guardians of a new era. The Council would not forget the lessons taught. This time humanity had returned fully awake. The stars had felt their fire, and the galaxy knew that nothing would ever be the same. After months of war and preparation, humanity had secured its place among the stars. The Galactic Council had been forced to retreat and reconsider their actions. The humans had not only defended their home but had shown that they could act with Precision, speed, and intelligence, even their enemies could not deny the power that had been hidden for centuries. Ethan and Laura stood on the bridge of the lead ship, looking at the fleets of humans moving silently through space. The stars stretched out before them, and for the first time in centuries they felt not fear but triumph. Back on Earth, cities were alive again. People rebuilt schools, homes, and laboratories. Machines worked alongside humans, producing energy, food, and structures faster than ever before. Forests were protected, oceans cleared, and skies brightened. Ava oversaw everything, coordinating satellites, defense systems, and the awakening of remaining humans. She told Ethan and Laura that the final step was not conquest but expansion. Humans had to spread to new worlds, but always with caution, wisdom, and care. The first human colonies were sent to nearby star systems. Ships folded space, silently appearing in orbit around planets that were suitable for life. The crews explored each world, mapping terrain, resources, and conditions while maintaining communication with Earth and the fleets in space. Laura taught them history, science, and survival strategies, reminding them that humans were not only survivors, but also caretakers of the worlds they would inhabit. Ethan led the fleet that guarded the colonies, ensuring that no council forces or other hostile species could interfere. The Galactic Council had begun to understand that humans were not just a species to control, they were a force of nature, a power that could no longer be contained or predicted. Kelthur, the council leader, called an emergency session with other members, pleading for peace. But the younger races still feared humans, and some began secretly forming alliances with the newly awakened humans, hoping to learn from them rather than fight them. The council realized that the galaxy had changed, and that humanity had returned with knowledge, strength, and patience unmatched by any other civilization. As years passed, humans spread farther into the galaxy, establishing trade, research, and defense networks. The fleets became faster and stronger. Each human learned to navigate the stars with skill and confidence while still respecting the lessons of their ancestors on Earth. Ethan and Laura continued to guide the fleets, teaching strategies, diplomacy, and human values. They watched as humans from old and new colonies worked together to share knowledge, culture, and technology. The planet itself thrived under human care, and the memory of centuries of silence became a story of hope and resilience. One night, while observing a distant system that had been recently settled, Laura asked Ethan if he thought humans would ever face another enemy as strong as the Council. He said perhaps, but he knew that humans had changed. They were no longer weak or fearful. They were united and ready for anything. Ava spoke to them both, saying that humanity had grown, not only in technology, but in wisdom and courage. She reminded them that the stars were vast, but humans had learned to move with patience, precision, and strength. On Earth, people celebrated their achievements every year, marking the day when humanity had awakened from centuries of sleep. They remembered the past, not to dwell on it, but to learn from it. Children were taught stories of courage and survival, of the awakening and the battles against the Council. Humanity understood the price of silence and the value of unity. The stars above looked different now, full of possibilities and challenges, but also full of hope. Ethan and Laura often walked through the new cities, looking at the lights, the clean streets, and the people smiling. They thought of the long journey from sleep to awakening, from fear to triumph. They remembered the first moments in the cryopods, the empty cities, the quiet streets. And now everything was alive again. Laura said softly that humans had learned patience, courage, and power. Ethan nodded, saying that the galaxy would remember their return forever. The fleets in space continued to move with purpose. They patrolled borders, explored new systems, and maintained communication with Earth and the colonies. Each crew member understood that humanity's return was not only for defense, but for the protection of knowledge and life. The stars themselves seemed to hum with the presence of humans, as if recognizing that a long-lost force had returned, and that it would shape the future for generations to come. At the heart of the planet, Ava spoke to all humans in a quiet voice broadcasted through satellites and ships. She reminded them of the lessons of the past and the duty they carried. She said that humans had survived centuries of silence, and now it was their task to guide, protect, and explore with wisdom and courage. Ethan and Laura listened as the message spread and felt a deep pride knowing that they had played a part in bringing humanity back to the stars. The Galactic Council eventually sent envoys to meet humans. Peacefully, they acknowledged that they had underestimated a species thought extinct, and that humanity had returned stronger than anyone could imagine. The humans received them with dignity and calm, explaining their terms and offering knowledge. And trade instead of violence, many species began to accept humans as equals, while others watched silently, learning from the humans' strength and patience. The galaxy slowly recognized that humans were no longer just survivors, but masters of their own fate. Ethan looked at Laura and said that the stars had trembled when humanity awakened, and now they were steady, alive, and moving forward. Laura smiled and said that humans had learned to rise from silence stronger than ever. She realized that the galaxy would never again forget humanity's name, and that the fire that had been sleeping for centuries would now burn bright forever on Earth. The night sky was clear, stars shone brighter without pollution. The wind carried the scent of oceans and forests. People walked freely on streets filled with light machines, hummed softly, helping humans with their work. The long sleep had ended, and humanity had awakened into a new age, one where they could protect their home, explore the stars, and live with courage, wisdom, and hope. The galaxy had learned that a quiet world could suddenly awaken to change everything, and that humanity, once forgotten, would now be remembered in every corner of the stars. The fleet moved silently between worlds as children played under alien suns and humans built new homes on new planets. Ethan and Laura stood together, looking at the stars full of light and life. They knew that the long centuries of silence had prepared humans, not just for survival but for greatness, and that the galaxy would never forget the planet that had slept and then awakened to show its power to the stars.